Are you free? Are we free? Now, a common man might say that he is free from 1947. And politically, we got our freedom from Britishers in 1947. But how do you actually define freedom? It's a very vast subject, right? Now, we have things like family, food, religion, political parties, or nowadays we are even enslaved to our smartphones. So we have a lot of things which actually stop us from being free. Now, since we have a lot of dimensions on freedom, if we talk about freedom for a whole night, it will not finish. Even if you sit and talk for the entire life, we might still feel that there are some topics that we have left out. Hi all, welcome back to another video. In this one, we would try to go through a bit of political freedom. Let's scribble. So in this video, we would try to understand about our political freedom. Now, when we talk about political freedom, we have to understand what are fundamental rights. Now, as a citizen of India, we have a lot of duties and rights towards the country. Now, fundamental rights are those which you are born with. These are inalienable rights, which means no one has to give this to you. You have it when you're born. Now, if you remember Kasab's case, Ajmal Kasab, though he was an enemy to the country, we have given him a fair trial. There was an advocate assigned to him. That is because it is actually his fundamental right. India as a country respects your fundamental rights. There are other freedom and rights that you have apart from fundamental rights that a person has. Now that is an agreement between you and state. I mean, there are things that you cannot do, there are things that you can do. This is an agreement between a person and an individual and the state. But fundamental rights are not like that. You are entitled to get it no matter what, whatever the conditions may be, even if you are the biggest terrorist. Now, is the first fundamental right that we will be talking about is the freedom of expression. Now, freedom of expression is something that, let's assume that you have an idea, you have a feel. Now, you can read about it, you can write about it, you can think about it, you can even talk about it. Now, is that a conditionless right? No. There are no real rights in India that is conditionless. There are always some ifs and buts that is associated with these rights that you have. Now, public safety, public security, public morality, and sentiments of people. These are some of those aspects that one should always keep in mind when he is doing any of these acts. Like when you are trying to express your freedom, you actually want to say something, you actually want to write something, you actually want to, I mean, even if you want to shoot a movie or talk in public, you should always think about what are the consequences or how exactly am I going to complete this. There is this IPC, Indian Penal Code 295A, a draconian rule. It's a non-bailable crime if you offend someone's religious, sexual, ethnic, language feelings. That means you could be inside the prison for 3 years. It's a non-bailable offense. Now, this can be widely misused by a lot of people in power especially, or people who want to use religion or caste or language or anything for their vested interests. But if you observe, we don't have many of those people using this very often. Do you know why? Because if a religious person is trying to tell that your speech, your prayer, or your book is offending them, and if you read their book, their prayers, it might be right opposite to you. Now, maybe because of that, I haven't seen many of these religious people using this IPC 295A much. As I said earlier, books and movies and TV serials, all these are a way of expressing someone's ideas or feelings. Now, you might have heard a lot of outcries and fatwas against books and movies, right? Uh, there was this famous movie called as Padmavat, which released I think 2 years back before. Now, if you have observed, these movies or the call for banning these movies would actually be coming much before the movie's release. So, how sure are you that the people who are calling out these movies to be banned would have really watched it, right? And in Malayalam industry also, we have a couple of movies, issues with movies names and themes and posters stating these movies to be banned. They don't even know whether what is the movie all about and whether the movie is actually about their religion or is it really hurting their religious sentiments. But even before that, we want them to be banned. You might have heard about Salman Rushdie's Satanic Verses and Taslim Nasreen's Lajja. These were the books which I remember, which for which there were fatwas. Salman Rushdie had to run around the world to save his life. At last, he got a safe haven in Britain. Britain stood strong in that aspect. Now, Satanic Verses is something which is actually a part of Quran itself, from what I've heard, from what I know. I mean, I have read Quran myself. And I mean, later it was told that it was not Muhammad's own, or it was not Jabril's revelations. It was something that the Satan had actually induced him to say. And the same thing has happened with M.F. Hussain, Perumal Murugan, a lot of these people. So, is that the right way of using this particular rule, 295A? Did they say anything against someone? Was that a real hate speech or a hate book that these people had written, or the movie was about? I mean, after watching Padmavat, I actually came to know that they were actually praising the Rajputs or whoever was there in those times. But we wanted to ban that movie even before it was released. So what does this tell us about? Article 19 of Constitution of India, Section D. It's actually talking about the freedom of movement. Now, as a citizen, you have the right to move throughout the territory of India without any issues. But what happens when a hartal or a bandh is coming? I mean, how often have you seen hartals and bandhs? You might have seen it in so many other names. Bandh was banned by High Court in some around a decade ago. But then we had renamed it as hartal. And then we had renamed it as some other thing. So in some other ways, we always have political parties or religious leaders or some groups, minorities, majorities, people calling out for bandh. Is this against democracy? Was that your idea? Or are you agreeing to it for the bandh or hartal or whatever they call it? The political parties, when they are trying to address a particular issue through bandh, is that your issue too? Or is it just because someone had an ego issue out there in that particular party in the top level who actually making this decision inside an AC room? How is that impacting you? And are you okay with it? How many of those issues were resolved after calling out for bandh? After stopping people from moving around, after stopping people from earning their bread and butter, How many times have you seen the petrol prices have come down? How many times have you seen the railway tickets prices were slashed because of a band, because of a hartal? How many issues were actually resolved through the violence that normally people would normally commit in a bandh or during a hartal? And what is the loss that it actually does to the country? Who's bearing for it? Do you think that these political leaders or the people, religious or political, or whoever is calling out for this, are they going to pay the government or the person who is suffering from it? Are you impacted with this? A person who's working for IT, he would be working from home. A government employee, he doesn't care. He's getting the money no matter what. But how about a shopkeeper who gets his money from everyday sales? How about a guy who goes to the work site and does hard labor? How about those auto rickshaw guys? How about those rickshaw pullers? How about those pushcart guys? What do they do? Was it or was that their decision? Do they even know what is happening around? Point to think. You would have seen a lot of circuses, right? The real circus I'm talking about in the past. But nowadays they're not in business. Do you know why? Because man as a whole is becoming more and more aware of animals, their rights, their freedom, and the kind of pain that they have, the welfare of them. So you cannot keep these birds and animals inside a cage for long. I mean, you cannot ideally in most cases. Some of those pets you still keep. But otherwise, you cannot make people or animals to do these kind of circuses, right? So, are we getting the same kind of freedom? Or are we aware of the freedom or the rights that a normal human being also is entitled to? I see that judiciary also is not very keen on observing these issues and setting up guidelines to the police or to the government itself. What is tolerance? You would have heard this term recently, in the sense in the last 2 years, associated with Amir Khan and his ex-wife Kiran Rao. He had made some comments about tolerance in India, and almost everyone were talking about tolerance afterwards. I mean, every news channel I'm talking about. Now, I mean, we have this norm in our mind that tolerance is a negative term. We don't normally associate tolerance with any of those positive things. And we have our political leaders and so-called gurus who always tell people that you should love everyone, you should love the whole world, you should love animals, you should love nature, you should love your neighbor, you should love everyone around. Is that really possible? Practically, it is not. Ideally, it is not. Do you really have to love everyone? No, you don't have to. You can pretend that you're loving everyone. But that is going to be completely fake. One day or another, you will have to explode. Now, what is the point that I'm trying to make is we actually have to tolerate one another. If someone has an opinion and he's saying this, he's expressing his opinion, you have to understand that he has the right to speak up. He has the right to tell his opinion. He has the right to express. You can agree with it, you can disagree with it. You can actually tell him that whatever you said is not right, or you can think about it. You can actually get into a conversation and make the other person understand why you think that what he said is not making a sense or that is not the right thing to say. But you cannot stop that person from speaking. Many of us would have heard about people talking about some ideas and others are getting offended, right? When someone is expressing their feelings, someone is talking about what they feel right, how actually should you be reacting to it? I mean, you can tell the person that the idea that he's expressing, the point that he's trying to put forward, is not right according to you. You can actually talk about it, you can debate and get into a conclusion about who's right and who's wrong. But in most cases, what we are doing is we would be trying to destroy that person who is trying to make a point. We take it personal. Now, if you kill him, if you chase him out of the country, is the idea dying along with that person's disappearance? The idea would come back to you looking straight into your eyes through someone else at a later point in time. All that you're doing is buying some time. They say your freedom ends when or where someone else's nose begins. Let's keep this in mind. Let us understand this very well. And let us try to imply this in every deed that we do in a daily basis. Just because someone else is trying to explain something and you don't like it, you cannot kill that person. You cannot shut that person up. You can talk to him. You can to him or her. You can debate. You understand from his point of view whether he's saying whatever he's saying is right or wrong. And only then the democracy would be in place. A person cannot make a country. People can make a country. And only when people is there, democracy is there. Democracy is not just voting and electing some people and then getting back to you whatever you are doing. It's a combined effort. I hope our country is going to progress as a much more a well-versed democratic country, a good place that everyone can say things and feel free. Thank you so much for joining. I will meet you in another video. Stay safe.